Okay, right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Sigvaris Group Britain's first ever webinar. And the title of today's session is going to be How to Live Better with Lymphoedema. And I'm really happy to welcome you to tonight's session. My name's Tracy Green, and I'm the clinical manager for Sigvaris here in Britain. I've been with them now for 7.5 years. My background is as a district nurse and lymphoedema specialist nurse, where I ran a service for just over 20 years prior to joining Sigvaris. So I've got quite a bit of experience with lymphedema, lipedema and venous conditions. Sigvaris itself is a Swiss company. It's family owned since 1984. And with more than 1984, with more than 150 years experience in in compression garments and 60 years expertise in medical compression therapy, we do look to provide compression solutions for lymphedema, lipedema and venous conditions. And as a company, really, we are committed to helping people to feel their best with high quality and innovative products with regards to medical compression therapy every day, and our portfolio does offer a wide range for different needs and indications. So during tonight's session, could I ask that any questions that you might have going forward, sort of throughout the session, that you actually type it into the chat facility, which is a little speech bubble at the top of your screen. And that way I'll be keeping an eye on things going through, and we will take down the questions as they come along, and then hopefully we'll have time to answer as many of them as possible at the end of the session. If we don't get a chance to actually answer all the questions, which we may not do, then we obviously will be looking to provide feedback throughout the social media channels, etc. Now, there will be a few poll questions popping up on the screen throughout tonight's presentation. Now, if you actually miss or you don't get time to click on the box, or you have a problem, if you go back into the chat facility, the actual link there to the question will be there, and you can answer the poll from there. But please do try and interact with us. It makes it a little bit more lively for all of us. We've received an awful lot of interest in this topic, so I'm not going to waste any more time. I'd like to introduce you to Matt Hazledine, who's Managing Director of Lymphoedema United. Now, Matt was diagnosed with lymphedema of his left leg in June 2011 after being hospitalised with cellulitis. And at that time, there was little information or help or advice available to him. Then, after 2.5 years as a trustee with the Lymphedema Support Network, Matt recognised his passion and purpose was to help others with this lifelong condition. In 2021, he wrote a book, How to Live Better with Lymphedema, Meet the Experts, and created Lymphoedema United and produced a patient-friendly website. And I'm sure if you've actually been on the website, you will see just how great it really is. 25% of Matt's annual profits are donated to lymphedema charities. So thank you very much, Matt, for doing that. And Matt, it's over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Tracy. And before we start, whilst I attempt to share my screen seamlessly, I'd just like to say thank you to you for that fabulous introduction, and also for your faith in having me as your first guest on your first webinar. So thank you very much indeed for that. And let's see how we get on with this. Hopefully you can all see my screen.
I can, yep. I think
good.
Everybody else should be able to.
Fabulous. So as Tracy said, I created Lymphoedema United, and there's a very good reason for that, which I'll come on to. But the key reason is to try, with my experience of 11 years now of lymphedema, to help others by sharing my experiences and tips on how to live better with lymphedema. So that's my passion, that's my purpose, and if I can help one person with one thing, then I've achieved my objective. So Let me tell you a little bit about my story following on from Tracy's introduction. I have lymphedema in my left leg. I was diagnosed in June 2011, so just over 11 years ago. Never forget it, because it was Father's Day weekend, and I was picking out a brand new putter as a gift from my daughter and my wife when I started to feel poorly. And we drove home, and instantly I felt extremely poorly. The temperature was extremely high. I was curled up in a ball trying to have a bath to warm up. And after this continued for a while, my wife decided to get me to A&E. And thankfully she did, because as you can see by the picture, what was about to unfold was cellulitis. We didn't know it at the time. All I had was severe flu-like symptoms. And the size of a penny or a 5p was a little red dot on my shin. And as you can see, over a matter of hours, it crawled up my leg in a burning hot, flaming, like a lava, if you like. It was a horrendous infection. For anyone who's had it, my sympathies are with you. For those who haven't had it, please continue that way. And, you know, it put me in hospital for 2 weeks. This was really the third component of the perfect storm. I had a suspected hernia in my groin, a strangulated hernia, they thought. So I was rushed to hospital to have urgent surgery. And when they operated, it wasn't a hernia at all. They told me, as in the surgeon, the experts, that it was an inflamed lymph node. So they took out a bunch of lymph nodes in my left groin and sent them off for tests. And fortunately, they came back clear. There was no cancer. But as a result, my left groin had a lot less lymph nodes than it did previously. So that was a few years before getting the cellulitis. And in between times, I had a serious fall down some stairs carrying an oak table in my new offices, which left some pretty horrendous bruising up and down my left leg. And then turned 40 in January 2011, and life begins at 40, right? So I thought, and it was 6 months later that I got the cellulitis after setting up a new business, and it put me out of action for quite some time. And this was the result. The cellulitis attacked my lymphatics in my leg, and I left hospital 2 weeks later with my left leg 56% bigger than my right, as the image shows. And that, as you can see, went from the foot right the way up to the upper thigh. So yes, it was quite a shock, having gone in with what I thought was a flu-like symptom, to then get an infection, to then get this massive leg to leave hospital with. And at that time, bearing in mind this was June 2011, I left hospital with very, very little information or advice about what lymphedema is, or how to treat it, or what to do. All I was told was, it's lymphedema, you've got it for the rest of your life, and you've got to wear stockings. And that was the gist of the briefing from the specialist. And sadly, through talking to members, even as recently as the last 6 months or so, I'm hearing the same thing, which is such a shame, because I know there's a lot of work being done by the LSN to train GPs on lymphedema and what to look out for and where to find help. So it's sad that that's still happening in some areas of the country today. So after leaving hospital and being at home recovering for a while, the next place to ask for help was my GP. And again, sadly, at that time, June 2011, maybe a few months after, my GP had very little knowledge of lymphedema, what it was, or more importantly, who to refer me to get expert help. And I think that's the key thing. When you have a condition like lymphedema, you want a solution. I wanted a solution. I wanted to fix the problem. I didn't accept that it was a lifelong condition. I wanted to fix it, but didn't know where to find that help. It was like wading through treacle in thick fog and not getting anywhere. That's how I explain it to anyone who asks what the early 6 months to a year of having lymphedema was. I was in a state of confusion, and I'll be completely honest with you, desperation. It was life-changing, as I'm sure most of you who have lymphedema have experienced. Clothes didn't fit, shoes didn't fit. I couldn't do the sports comfortably that I was able to do. I was very self-conscious about the way I looked. I didn't put shorts on in public, and I had this stocking thing that I had to wear, which at the age of 40 I wasn't really expecting to have. And the confusion, because I didn't know where to go for help. Thankfully, there's a thing called the internet. Thankfully, I've got a very, very supportive wife who spent a lot of time helping me through this difficult period. And we had to learn what lymphedema was. And the obvious place to start is Google. And it's a horrendous place to start because some of the images are extremely frightening as to what lymphedema could look like. And in some cases, I'm sure people have got to that stage, which is terrifying. So we stumbled across the LSN, and thank goodness we did. LSN, for those of you who don't know, Lymphedema Support Network, fantastic organisation run by patients, and they're a charity that provides fabulous information about lymphedema and have regular bulletins, fantastic websites. So if you don't know who they are, LSN, check them out on the internet. They were a lifesaver to me at that time. The other element was, if the GP couldn't refer me to somebody, where else would I find expert care and advice? And as I said, just to reiterate, this was June 2011, maybe August 2011 by this point. My wife spent several days researching, trying to find the expert care I needed, and making many phone calls, and I believe ended up speaking to a lady up in Scotland who may well have been Margaret Snedden from the BLS, may well have been, who said, actually, you've got somebody 10 minutes from your house who is a specialist lymphedema clinic. When we mentioned that to the GP, he thought it was just for cancer patients. But we signed up and they took great care. And, you know, the focus for them initially was to control and reduce the swelling. And therefore, once the swelling had been reduced as best they could, it was a question of self-management to maintain the limb size. And as I'm sure you're all aware, our self-management regime includes compression, it includes massage, it includes moisturizing, healthy lifestyle, and exercise or fitness, movement to reduce the limb swelling. So there's emphasis on us here, as you can see, to take care of ourselves, and not just physically, but mentally as well. Lymphedema, you know, been through some dark times with this lovely thing we call lymphedema, and there are people out there, there are supporting organisations out there, and also more importantly, as I've found thanks to Lymphedema United, people out there with lymphedema that are prepared to connect or unite with others and talk about their experiences and share their tips, and find that they open up more to people who have got the condition because they understand what they're going through. They're walking the walk as well as talking the talk. And that was one of the key parts of the website, was to bring people together. And we achieved that very successfully at our charity golf day in June, to bring people together with lymphedema. So I'm getting off track, but the point is, mentally and physically, it's very important that I look after myself, as we all look after ourselves as well. So moving on from that, the challenges with compression. This is the main subject of the evening, and this was my leg in 2016. So as you can see, after lots of treatment, compression, wraps and bandaging and massage, it looks kind of leg shaped in the sense that my foot didn't have edema. My ankle looked quite slim, but as you can see then, the calf kind of explodes into this big bulbous mass of lymphedema, fat and fluid. And compression is one of the challenges for me. This is a class 4S that I wear. I wear 24/7. I wear a class 4S during the day, which is made to measure. And then in the at night time, I slip into a comfortable class 2 to get me through the night. And on occasions, if my calf rebounds, I have a lower leg class 2, which sits on top of the 4S to really give it some extra compression. So it's either that or the Velcro wraps that when I need to act, pulls in the size of the calf. And one of the things that I do on a monthly basis religiously is measure my leg in 4 different places. I keep a little spreadsheet, but people who know me will understand that. And I measure using the typical measuring tape that the therapists use around my ankle, around the widest part of my calf, the knee, and mid to upper thigh. And I type those measurements in on the first day of every month, just to see if there's any trend of rebound or increase in size or reduction. It's just a handy tip, because I don't know about you guys, but my appointments used to be 6 monthly, and I hear that my appointments may well be moving to 8 monthly. So it's a long time between measurements. So it's something that we can do just to keep a track on our limb and take the necessary action by wearing wraps or getting some bandages. Oh my goodness, this is a subject. Donning and doffing. What a challenge. I have a 4S. It's a pretty tough material. It's not very forgiving. And I have to say, up until I hit 50 a couple of years ago, getting it on was with brute force. Turning it inside out, putting it over the foot, and literally yanking it up all the way up my leg. And it did eventually cause or contributed to back problems, neck problems. It threw my gait out. Lymphedema made me lopsided. Yeah, it's got tougher and tougher to don these 4S stockings. Now, a couple of tips. I use Dermol 500 to moisturize my skin before I put the toe glove and the stocking on, and it gives it a little bit of slip, which is great. I use rubber gardening gloves with good grip. I have very soft office worker hands, and I did scuff my knuckles in the first few months of putting these garments on. So gloves are the way forward, and the cheap, £2, £3 for a pair of gardening gloves with the rubber grips, absolutely perfect. So there are a couple ideas, but on the Lymphedema United website, if you click on the Sigvaris page on Meet the Suppliers, there's a product called the Rolly. Now, I'm dying to get my hands on one of those, hint, hint, Tracy, because they look a really good tool for donning and doffing your compression garment. Check it out. It's on the Sigvaris page on Meet the Suppliers on the Lymphedema United website. So that could help. The other challenge, and this is again a key feature for this evening's presentation, I guess, is properly fitted compression garments. I don't know about you, but after 11 years of wearing different garments measured by different therapists with different companies and different fabrics, sometimes I don't get properly fitted compression garments. Some of it's human error, some of it's error perhaps at the manufacturers. For example, one time I had right legs delivered instead of left legs, which it's one of those things, but there's nothing you can do with them. Once you open the packet, that's it. They're no good for human use. But this is so important. A properly fitted compression garment is so important to ensure that we maintain or indeed control the swelling of our affected limb. Now, as Tracy alluded to earlier, question time. So shortly you will see a poll appear on your screens with a question, which I shall read out for you in a second. And just answer yes or no, submit your answer. And if it doesn't pop up on the screen, as Tracy said, nip into the chat box at the top and submit your answer there. But the question will be, which you'll see shortly, do you have properly fitted compression garments? So over to Matt, who's working tirelessly behind the scenes, making all this fabulous technology work to put the poll together. And answers will be given by Tracy at the end of the presentation. Now I can't see what's going on here. So Tracy, could you give me a thumbs up when you're ready for me to continue? And you're on mute, so I can't hear you. So just a thumbs up.
Sorry, yes, we've got 14 votes so far.
14, come on, we 14. Can do more than that.
Yeah.
Do you have properly fitted compression garments? Yes or no? Now's your chance to bear all.
Right, we're getting a few in the chat box as well. So we've got, so far we've got 64% yes, 35% no. So that's quite positive. That
is positive, yes, but it needs to be closer to 100%, Tracy.
It certainly does. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let that finish and we'll go back to that at the end of the session, Matt.
Okay, right. Well, just give me a thumbs up when you want me to continue.
I think we can continue.
Lovely. Good. Well, thank you for taking part in that. That's the first of 3 that we'll be doing this evening. And to continue with the challenges I've had personally with ill-fitting compression garments, this is my left toe or the side of my left foot, which you can see 3 beautiful corns, which are incredibly painful. And this was some years ago now. I had an open toe 4S slanted cut across the foot, and during, well, some of it was my fault by keeping my leg down while I was driving long distances or at the desk. In hot weather your feet expand, but you can see that the left hand cut or side of the compression stocking caused a corn. So not one to make a fuss, I moved the slanted cut down a bit and then got another one. So moved it down a bit further and then got another one. And I don't know, you know, I won't say it's as painful as cellulitis, because by no means it is, but they're not very comfortable corns, that's for sure. So this was one of the challenges that we faced in trying to get a garment that didn't cause corns on the left side of my foot. Because of course, once you've put the toe glove on, the stocking on, the sock, and then the shoe, that's little wiggle room. Another one to mention is rucking, which I've experienced behind the knee, which also can appear at the elbow. And as you can see with these stockings, there was no padding or skin protection in the crease. Now, I have found out that there are solutions for this problem, including silk pockets, which you can actually put some padding down the back of it. But I'll come on to my preferred choice a bit later on. This is the effect that rucking had on the back of my knee. And as you can see, I suppose, very sore area. The skin caused, the stocking caused abrasion of the skin. And of course, the worrying part of that is it's open to infection, such as cellulitis and folliculitis, which I can often get. And I don't know if you can see on the slide there, on the image around here, you can see these little red dots going up my leg, and that, I am told, is folliculitis, where the heat causes the rubbing of the follicles and the hair follicles. But this area behind the knee, as you see, was a bit of a concern without having any protection behind the knee. And also rucking caused welting, and this is where it was too tight behind the knee. And when I was on long car journeys or sitting at my desk writing the book and creating the website, which took many months of desk bound behavior, it caused this welting behind the knee, which again was very uncomfortable, very painful in places. And I alerted my GP of this and sent this very picture to my GP to bring her attention to the problem. Just while we're on the subject of this one, car journeys, I'm digressing slightly. Funnily enough, I spoke to a gentleman earlier in the year who experiences the same thing I do. After about an hour and a half in the car, almost to the minute, I feel pain in my affected limb, either at the knee or at the ankle or the foot. It's excruciating. So I have to stop, pull over, get to some services and stretch my legs. So when we were talking about this at the golf day, another gentleman said, yes, I can relate to that. And on the phone on a Zoom call, another gentleman said exactly the same thing. Almost an hour and a half, 2 hours into the car journey, the pain strikes. So, you know, plan that in. I know it's blooming obvious, really, but if you're going on a long journey, see where the services are, see where the opportunities to pull over are, and build that into your journey, because it's not safe driving when you're in pain, or share the journey with somebody else who can drive with you. That's a little tip. I'll take that one off my legs, off my list, off my legs. Got legs on the mind. So rucking can cause abrasion of the skin and welting. And other compression challenges. Well, what do we compare compression to? I'd just like to show you a pair of trousers I used to wear in the 80s, which kind of feel like the compression garments I'm wearing. It's not really me, honestly. Mine are pink. Compression, if it's too tight, it's painful and can be damaging to the lymphatics. So what do? We take it off. We remove the compression that's supposed to be doing us good and helping us. Conversely, if they're too loose, they become ineffective, like Nora Batty here, hanging around your ankles. So what's the point? They don't actually do anything to control the swelling. And if the garment's too loose, guess what? The lymphedema and the swelling will fill the space that it's got available. Donning and doffing is another reason for not wearing the garment, because people who struggle to get these things on often give up, especially in older age. And this is not guesswork. This is by talking to many people that have thankfully got in contact with me since the book and the website. And some of them are ugly. I have to confess, for 11 years, I hid my lymphedema away as best as I could. I've never worn shorts in public, even with friends. I'd wear baggy trousers to hide the lymphedema, until I read Amy Rivera's book, Drop the Skirt. And now a good friend of mine, David Jailer, who attended the golf day, made me promise him that I wouldn't give a monkey's what other people thought about my stocking leg. And the next time I had the opportunity, I'd wear shorts in public. So I think it was mid-end of June, I did exactly that. I tore the bandage off, put my shorts on, and went to East Grinstead for my reflexology lymphatic drainage in my shorts for the world to see. And I have to say, it was very liberating, and I felt more comfortable wearing shorts in public. And the other benefit of doing that, and I know I'm sidetracking, but bear with me, is people then ask you, what's wrong with your leg? Now, I used to hate that question years ago, but actually, because of what I'm trying to do, which is to help others with this condition, people who ask me, I tell them what it is. And a number of them have said, oh yeah, well, my aunt had that because she had her arm, she had cancer and her arm went big. All right. So you can then point them in the right direction of either the LSN site, the BLS, or Lymphoedema United to get the information that might be helpful to them. But I sidetrack. Some of these garments are ugly, let's face it. So we either hide it away like I did, or we don't wear it at all. And essentially, that leads into my next question. So Matt's going to bring up the next poly. And following on from the third point there, the question is, do you struggle donning or doffing your compression garment? Yes or no? Do you struggle donning or doffing your compression garment? Over to you. Tracy, when you're off mute, then
Oh, done it again. 70% yes and 29% no so far, but we've only got 17 votes, so
okay. We'll say that the majority then are struggling with donning and doffing. Is that very fair to say there, Tracy?
I think so. Yes, definitely. Yeah, we're looking at 2/3 at least. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it okay to continue?
It is.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So in addition to the Sigvaris Rolly, Sigvaris Rolly, get my L's and my R's around the right way. On our website, you can find other products to help with donning and doffing. Again, meet the suppliers, and if you click on the suppliers listed there, have a look at their products. There are different variations of donning and doffing devices, and I hope Tracy won't mind, but the Easy As range from More UK Limited is definitely worth a look. Okay, but I can't plug too many other suppliers because Sigvaris will tell me off, but worth having a look at Easy As. All right, let's move on. So not wearing compression garments is essentially non-compliance, and there are obviously disadvantages to not being compliant. The swelling increases, as we know, if you're not wearing your compression. Potentially mobility reduces, and in some cases that can lead to obesity. And the interesting thing with the word obesity is I've been classified obese at my clinic for many, many, many years. I'm just over 6'3", 17 and a bit stone. I'm not going to declare how much of that bit there is, but because of my large left leg, which I'm sure has at least contributed 7 stone, at least to my weight, I'm classified as obese. Now, the challenge with that is, as I found out recently, there are some clinics that, if you are classified obese, will delay your treatment plan until you've hit the target figure. Now, they'll provide you potentially with an information pack or signpost you on where to get help, maybe some leaflets on lymphedema, but to actually start your treatment plan with compression won't start until you've hit the obesity targets. So this is one of the disadvantages of non-compliance, which is why it's important to get properly fitted compression garments. You see how this is all linking together beautifully. It's like we've prepared it, Tracy, isn't it?
It is.
And of course, with obesity comes other conditions. As we all know, I'm sure health can be affected, such as heart disease, diabetes, all sorts of other things which I'm not qualified to talk about really, but these create further strain on the NHS and other health services. So you can see the knock-on effect of not wearing compression, not having those properly fitted compression garments could potentially have on the NHS, and it all costs money. These garments are not cheap, even on prescription. They're a lot of money, and if we get them and they're wrong or they're uncomfortable, we don't wear them, that's a lot of money that could be spent better in the NHS system. So can all of this be avoided? And by this I mean non-compliance. Well, let's find out. So I'm pleased to say, after those horrific pictures earlier, this is my leg post surgery with the lymphedema swelling kind of under control. I do get a bit of rebound in the calf, and as I mentioned earlier, I either wear my wraps or an extra class 2 to reduce the swelling. But the purpose of this bit is really to sort of focus on, for years and years and years, I just accepted what the therapist told me I had to wear. This is incredibly naive, but it's the truth. I didn't know what suppliers were out there. I didn't know what products were available. I didn't know what options were available. I just went to see my therapist, got measured, told I was having this product in a 4S, and off you go. And then I'd wear it, and you saw from the pictures earlier the problems that have been caused in the past. So it was only really until I got involved with the LSN as a trustee that I realised, perhaps naively, that there were other companies out there, other products, other stockings. And I went from oblivion, or being oblivious, I should say, to understanding the options available that could help me. And like anything, if you're informed about the options, you can be more proactive, you can work with the therapist, and they are very willing to listen. Because if you're in pain, they want you to be comfortable. They want the garments to be worn, so they're open to working with you to find the right solutions. I've got a few examples of this. Comfort, slanted cut at both ends of the limb. Just expand on that briefly. I had circular tops, no slant at the top of the thigh. So I was getting a bulging, if you can imagine, between the stocking top and the belt line, which meant that I had to wear Ito shorts or compression shorts. But we then discovered that we could do a slanted cut up the upper thigh, which reduced some of the upper thigh swelling. And the same principle at the bottom of the foot. Instead of a closed toe, you can have open toe with compression going from your big toe right across the toe line to the left side, which reduces the swelling on the top of the foot, as I've experienced in the past. We touched on this earlier, behind the knee and presumably behind the elbow, same principle. There are silk pockets, which you can put padding in, which can help. But what's worked for me personally is what's in this picture here. And it's called, the official title is a functional knee zone, I believe. Do nod, Tracy, if that's correct. Functional knee zone, thank you very much.
Yeah.
But I used to call them comfy fit panels because I'm a bit silly like that. I don't know if you can see there, but this is classic 4S hard cheese grating material here. And then in the center, you've got a much softer fabric, which still has compression, but it's absolutely comfortable behind the knee, doesn't cause abrasion of the skin, doesn't cause rucking. And for me personally, this was life-changing with compression. So I urge you to have a conversation with your therapist. Many of the companies do this as an option. And also, if you're struggling with the creases of your limb, what worked for me, which might work for you, is taking a photograph and sending it to your GP saying, this is what my garment is doing to me. Can you prescribe the knee functional zone or the elbow functional zone, I'm guessing, as part of my garment on the FP10 on prescription? Because otherwise it's going to potentially cause infection if the skin breaks, or welting. And my GP actually said to me that she was concerned that the welting could cause DVT. So she was very happy to prescribe. The other thing, to make them less ugly, there's different materials, there are different colors, there are different styles, there are different patterns available. Some of them, to be fair, you have to pay for. But we're wearing these for life. They're part of our wardrobe, so perhaps it's worth the investment to move away from the tan or the black and get something a bit more funky that you could wear as part of your outfit. So this is me, as good as me today, which is quite a difference from the pictures that you saw at the beginning of the slideshow. And what I can urge, if I may, is to empower yourself with the knowledge to work with your therapist to find the solutions. And a lot of that means surfing the web, means having a look at these websites, visiting the different suppliers' websites, having a good look at Sigvaris' website to see what options they have that you can suggest to your therapist would work for you to get that ideal fit. And the win-win is a perfect fit and comfortable to wear, which means compliance. And I say that because the compliance is a win-win for both us as the patient and your therapist. It means we're wearing our compression every day as instructed, and we're doing our bit to keep the swelling down. So inform yourself, communicate with your therapist, and hopefully, if you, as the polls suggested earlier, if you're one of those with ill-fitting garments, hopefully these tips will help you go from there. Which links in to our third and final question, which Matt will put up in a minute. And the question is, would you be confident in discussing the options available with your therapist to find your perfect fit? So it's a yes, no answer. If it hasn't popped up on your screen, visit the chat box. And I'll just wait for Tracy's thumbs up before we continue.
Actually, a very positive response to this one, Matt. 92% saying yes, they would feel confident. So that's good. That's really, really good.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
That's great news. Great news. Okay, well, I hope that has been useful. I hope there's been a few tips in there that will potentially help you to live better with lymphedema, which is a great name for a book, which is available on Amazon. Please visit the website. It's free membership. Sign up. There's lots of members benefits available. Can unite with me on social media at lymphounited, or if you have something specific you want to talk to me about, then do get in contact with me at the email address there, hello@lymphounited.com. Thank you again very much indeed to Tracy and the team at Sigvaris who have worked very hard to put this together. I very much appreciate it, and I hope that's been of interest, and I shall pass you back to Tracy, who will start with the Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matt. I think it's been very well appreciated from some of the comments and things in the chat box. People are very grateful for you for sharing your story. And I think, sort of listening to how people feel and how this journey you've gone through, I think echoes quite a bit with other people as well. So thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
Right, we've had a few questions come in through the chat. So what I'll do is I'll just start to go through some of those. I've got one that I'd like to ask first, actually. I think you covered a little bit of it, Matt.
Yeah.
But when you were initially diagnosed and discharged from the hospital, and you were given compression hosiery, I think you said that you actually were discharged with some hosiery.
Yeah.
But you said that you didn't have a lot of information or advice. So what impact did this have on your lymphedema and you initially?
Well, the product that was quite funny, actually. Looking back, it was quite funny. At the time, it was not funny at all. The specialist said to me, yep, you're discharged this afternoon. Nip down to the supplies department and pick out some stockings. You're going to need to wear those for the rest of your life. So that was that. So very little information, as I said. So I went down to the supplies team and they got a pair of off-the-shelf, I suppose the longest ones they could find because of my height, class 2, and they were appalling. I actually asked them if I could have more than one pair, because I thought if I've got to wear these every day, then you've got to wash them and turn them around.
Yeah.
And they said, yes, if you want any more pairs than this, you're gonna have to talk to your GP or buy them. Well, that was useful. So anyway, I got these stockings home. As I said, being a 40-year-old wearing stockings was something I had to get my head around anyway. So I had a bit of mental challenge there. But they kept sliding down. They weren't long enough. They weren't a strong enough compression. They weren't made to measure, obviously. And so they were ineffective. But I didn't know any different. I didn't know there are others out there. I didn't know there was such thing as made to measure until several months later, when I met the therapist who put me in the right garments, who put me in, at that point, a class 3 or class 4 made to measure, and took me under her wing. But the lack of information at the time, and almost flippantly to say, yeah, you've got this for the rest of your life, crack on, is daunting. As I said, it's life-changing. So yes, I was very disillusioned and desperate for help at the time, and thankfully it took some time, but I found it.
Found it. Thank you. That's great. Emma asked a question, and it was your lymphedema clinic private or NHS affiliated?
Very good question. It had some affiliation with the NHS, but it was mainly funded by the hospice itself. So this was the hospice in the Weald, which no longer services lymphedema, non-cancer lymphedema patients. So a lot of the funding came from the hospice itself, but I do understand they had some support from the NHS. I didn't pay privately for my garments, but if I wanted to purchase more toe caps or more ETOs, then I could do at the time. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And Susie's asked, have you ever considered having like lymphovenous anastomoses or lymph node transfer surgery, or has this been discussed?
So to find out whether I was suitable for LVA, I had a lymphoscintigraphy scan, which is quite uncomfortable. They inject the dye between my toes and track the lymphatic flow. And because of the star bursting in my calf, which you probably saw from the pictures, the big ballooning calf, I wasn't deemed suitable for LVA at that time. And at that time, I'm talking about 2015, 2016. But I was encouraged to try lymph node transfer. And I had that surgery in Chelmsford with a surgeon called Matt Griffiths. And I think I was number 6, his 6th patient to do this on the NHS as well. And funnily enough, I played golf the other day with his first, who's also called Matt. So Matt Griffiths, the surgeon, me, Matt, the other Matt. Exactly. I think he only did the surgery on people called Matt. I could be wrong. But anyway, so I had the lymph node transfer, and for the first few weeks, it responded quite well. The swelling went down. And then unfortunately, it didn't take. The new nodes, which they took from my neck here and put back into my groin, didn't take. And sadly, the swelling went back to 58%, which was bigger than when I came out of hospital. So the final throw of the dice on the basis I wasn't suitable for LVA was liposuction for lymphedema, which I was very, I suppose, privileged to have on the NHS at St George's with Katie Milroy. But it took a lot of form filling from Dr. Gordon and the team to get funding for that surgery. And I think it was perhaps at that time, this was 2017, perhaps the NHS funding then was a little more affluent than it is now. But they had to jump through hoops of fire to get funding. And I think it was because I had a very young daughter. I'd started my own business, and literally the checklist was in my favor: my age, the fact I look after myself, I was a compliant patient, tick, tick, tick. So I had liposuction, which resulted in my leg looking as good as it does today. So it's just a question of trying to maintain it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that is the problem. I think it does depend on the areas that will and clinics that might be able to support patients to get the funding. So I think that can be a problem going forward. Emma asked a question: how did you go about getting made to measure rather than just sort of usual sizing?
Well, that's down to my therapist, because as I touched on earlier, I was discharged from hospital with off-the-shelf class 1 or class 2, which kept sliding down. And it was several months later before I sat in front of a therapist, and you know, that was 2011. A lady called Kelly Nixon, who is an absolutely fabulous human being, as most therapists and people in lymphedema land are. And my wife came with me, and it was about an hour and a half, 2-hour appointment where I literally felt, I went in with desperation, I came out with hope and the feeling that I was being looked after. She gave me everything I needed. She measured me and said, you're going to need a higher level of compression that's tailor-made to your leg. And again, they were supported financially by the hospice, and they worked. And through that, with the wraps plus the multi-layer lymphedema bandaging that I was having twice a year, the massage, the pump, everything I could do to throw at it, we did. But sadly, in my case, it got to the point where whatever we threw at it, it would bounce back. I'd get the rebound, specifically in the lower leg, and that's why surgery was probably the last throw of the dice to reduce the swelling.
Yeah.
So long-winded answer, but I hope it answered it.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just typing a response to Catherine there. And Catherine's actually said that even if surgery is not available in the NHS, it should be discussed as an option. Obviously, earlier being the better. So I think, you know, everybody does agree that that is something that should be discussed early on, rather than waiting till the latter end of the disease.
Could I just jump in very quickly there?
Yeah, of course you can.
On our website, meet the experts. Dominic Furness from the Oxford Lymphedema practice. He's a surgeon that does LVA, lymph node transfer and liposuction. Yes, it's a private practice, but he has a whole page and a whole bio on Meet the Experts page on Lymphedema United website, if that's of interest, or of course you can visit their website directly. Thank you.
Okay. We've had somebody here saying that they've had LVA declined on the basis that it's not medically necessary, even though they're a great candidate for it, and it's costing $20,000 having to pay for it. So I think, you know, there is this postcode lottery, depending on where you're living, what's available through medical reimbursements and things like that. So I think that is quite a problem really for some people with lymphedema across the globe.
Absolutely. And I know of people that have had to pay for it privately because it's not available on the NHS.
Yeah.
What I would say in the UK is Dominic Furness, who I actually had a Zoom call with to see whether I was suitable for it recently, was very frank, very honest, and said, I need to get my back sorted before I even go and visit him properly to talk LVA. There's a lot going on at the moment. So he's definitely worth the chat, to have an online consultation or visit there in person to have the scans to see if you're suitable. So yes, worth checking out.
Brilliant, thank you. And what treatment did you feel you benefited most from? Oh,
good question. Right, so let's do short-term gain. With me personally was the bandaging. So the multi-layer lymphedema bandaging, which I'd have 3 weekly sessions twice a year. And I love targets, I love figures. And Kelly Nixon would take the volume before we started, and I'd have my target figure that I had in my mind that I wanted to get my limb size down to. She used to laugh her head off because every time she measured me, we'd recalculate the volume to see, right, what else can I do to hit that figure? And the best it ever got down to was, I think, 30.5, but she said it had to be called 31 because that's how they measure. So, you know, but it was really great. And the trouble with my leg, though, was maintaining that size. And I think I'd probably have to have lived in 4S plus wraps continuously to even try and control it. So short term for me personally was bandaging, and Velcro wraps are great if on a hot day, or if you notice a bit of rebound, is to put the Velcro wraps on just to give that extra bit of compression. But as I said earlier, sadly, surgery was my last roll of the dice. So that's a longer term solution. But I still have to look after myself, still have to wear the wraps, still have to wear compression and do everything 24/7, 365 days a year.
Yeah, that's really important. Right, we've got 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask you one final question, Matt.
Okay.
So if you were given free rein to design compression hosiery, what would be your ideal components for that garment?
Free rein.
Free rein.
Sky's the limit. No
Sky's
budget.
the limit.
Who's paying, me or Sigvaris?
Oh, now then.
Well, I'm not going to bluff the audience by saying I haven't been forewarned of this question. I have given it some thought. I think I'd start, most importantly, picking up on the main theme of the presentation with ill-fitting garments and making sure they're properly fitted. I would start with the method of measuring. Now, I've heard talk in the trade that there are some clinics that use digital scanning equipment to measure your whole limb electronically. Because what I've noticed over the years, and this is by no means a criticism, is that therapists can sometimes measure differently to each other. We're all human beings. Some pull the tapes a little bit tighter than the other one. So the consistency for me personally has not always been the same. Whereas if it's digital, I would imagine that that's going to be more accurate and more consistent every time. So I'd start with the measuring. I'd use softer materials, specifically at the joints, as standard. So to avoid the behind the knee, in the elbow crease, I'd put those knee functional zones or arm functional zones as standard, without losing the level of compression. That's the important thing, because there's no point having a softer material for the knee to bulge. The material would be comfortable and easier to adjust, perhaps with a little bit of lycra in, who knows, but something that's easier to manipulate, and certainly donning. Now, the donning device, of which I think I need to have a look at your one, would be free of charge to anyone who has to wear compression garments. I think it's one of the biggest challenges, and especially I've started to notice it as I've got older. And also I'd have a range of colours and patterns available to make them look more like sporting garments, or those sporty leggings that you get with branding down the side. So I could comfortably wear my shorts in public. And maybe it's for both legs. Maybe you'd have the compression on one leg, for me personally, and then a standard leg on the other one, so it actually looks like a deliberate garment that I'm wearing. So something with sporty stripes, or black and white, or blue, or denim. There you go. Something that you could actually look like an actual outfit. And I think that would help me to feel more comfortable and confident wearing my garments or shorts in public. I've spoken about it before. Be great to get sponsorship from Nike or Adidas or one of the big brands, Calvin Klein, just to get a bit of show and tell. I've got my Nike ones on today, so that's if I had a wish list, that would be it. I think you've popped onto mute there, Tracy.
Thank you, Matt. I think other people have also maybe got some of those ideas as well in mind. So that would be interesting, really, to see what the people thought of that. So if we just go quickly, just before we finish, we've got a minute left. If we just go back to those polls, on the completion of the one about being able to feel confident, 93% yes, 6% no. On the one with struggling with donning and doffing, 66% say yes, they have problems, 33% say no. And on the topic of properly fitted garments, 64% are saying yes, they do have, and 35% no, they don't. So people feel they have got some pretty good fitting garments there. Still struggling with donning and doffing, and the good thing is that they do feel confident about discussing with therapists. So that's good, that maybe they feel that they've got that rapport with their therapist to help as well.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
that's brilliant. Matt, any final comments to make before we close the webinar?
I think the only thing I'd leave on is I've learnt a lot over the last year and a half of working with the lymphoedema community, of uniting with people on social media, of sharing experiences and tips to help others. And what would be great is if we could get together on social media, more people, connecting, uniting, talking, joining our website free of charge and putting their experiences on the Meet the Members section. And yeah, great. Come and join us, come and unite with us. It's free of charge and there's lots of resources. So that's my gratuitous plug to end with, Tracy.
Thank you. And I think you've just got a new member as well. Danielle's just joined Lymph United. So
Thank you,
there you
Danielle.
go. That's brilliant.
Thank you, Danielle.
Okay. Right. Just want to say thank you to everybody who has joined us this evening. I hope you found it beneficial and interesting. I certainly have. And just want to say, and somebody else has just bought the book you've mentioned as well, Matt. So that's brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you on further webinars going forward. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.